Nintendo. I love Nintendo, and so do you. Even if you don't like Nintendo's business practices, you gotta admire Nintendo for making some of the biggest and best games of all time. There's a reason why they're one of the most respected and one of the biggest game companies out there. Nintendo, being a company that's been around for well over 100 years, has made a lot, and I do mean a lot, of franchises and IPs that just kind of got forgotten to time. And that's why I made this. This is my own version of the Nintendo franchise Iceberg. So there's a lot to talk about here. So here's what I'm going to do in this video. From level 3 onward, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of the game, what happened to it, and give you some basic information about, like, say, what year it came out in, what regions it came out in, and what systems it came out on. So there's a lot to go over here, and it should be a very fun video for you today. And some other things, this is only about games. I'm not going to get into the stuff Nintendo did before they got into the video game industry, because honestly, that could be its own video. And I'm not going to get into Nintendo peripherals, because honestly, Nintendo has made a lot of wacky peripherals, such as the e-reader, and they deserve their own video too. So like I said, it's going to be a fun video, but before I get into the Iceberg, it'd be really killer if you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell as well for notifications on future videos. That really helps the channel out, and thank you for everyone who's been subscribing and watching videos recently. It means the world to me. I also want to plug my social media here. Twitter, Instagram, and ZMix, especially my Instagram. I've been posting some heat over there, so go check that out if you're interested. And one more thing, if you want to make this video really entertaining for you, here's a drinking game. Take a sip every time I mention Smash Brothers, or take a shot every time I say Cult Classic or Charming. So that will make this video way more entertaining. Okay? Okay. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the Nintendo series Iceberg. How many do you know? Level 1 is all the common Nintendo franchises. They are cash cows. Games that can probably walk up to anyone on the street and be like, hey, do you like Mario? And they would probably have an idea of what Mario is. Even if the characters don't get a lot of games, the characters themselves are iconic. Look, if I see them at the Nintendo store in Shibuya, which is a very cool store by the way, they belong at Tier 1. Most of the games here have easily cleared over 5 million units sold, either for a single game or as a franchise. So I won't get into too much detail about these games at level 1, but if you do want to hear me talk about Mario, I did do a Mario tier list last year, and you can check that out. Pit is the level 2 image because I'm biased as fuck. Level 2 comes in a few different flavors. One flavor is the cash cows that appeal to more of a niche or hardcore crowd. So that's your Fire Emblem, your Pikmin, or your Xenoblade. The second flavor are franchises that were popular but seem to peter out. So that's your F-Zero, your Star Fox, and your Kid Icarus. I will do videos about Kid Icarus and Star Fox in the future, so be on the lookout for those. And then there's the final flavor, games that were one-offs but are deeply tied to Nintendo's identity. So that's your ARMS, your Duck Hunt, your Ice Climber, or your Balloon Fight. And the way I see it is that if your series was relevant enough to have a playable character in Smash, it can't be any lower than a 2. Ah yes, Golden Sun, Nintendo's cult classic handheld JRPG. I missed this game back in the day, but a lot of my friends with Game Boy Advances really did enjoy Golden Sun. Many people were upset that protagonist Isaac was relegated to an assist trophy in the Smash series. I'm not overly familiar with this series, as I just wasn't much into the Game Boy Advance or RPGs back when this series was relevant, but I can see why it got such a strong fanbase. Unfortunately, the DS game Dark Dawn seemed to split the fans, and it didn't sell all that well. Since then, not much has been heard from Golden Sun. Nintendo's puzzle games are really underrated. They know how to make an excellent puzzle game, such as Dr. Mario. Panel de Dawn is no exception. You've probably played it as Tetris Attack or Pokemon Puzzle League, but the original title is Panel de Dawn, and it never left Japan in its original form, but you can play it on the Switch, Super Nintendo Library.
But look guys, look, it's one of my greatest achievements, Wario Land 4 on the Game Boy Advance.
Wario Land was Wario's premier platform game. Very solid titles and fun power-ups and level designs. Virtual Boy Wario Land is probably the best Virtual Boy game. Unfortunately, the poor sales of Wario Land Shake It seem to kill the series. The Mysterious Murasame Castle is a weird franchise that's a bit of a rabbit hole. It only has one game that didn't leave Japan until the 3DS. Despite this, The series has had cameos in other titles, such as Samurai Warriors 3 on the Wii, Nintendo Land on the Wii U, and almost having the hero Takamaru be playable in Smash, but he did land as an assist trophy and Mii costume. Hell, he even had a TV drama based loosely upon it. I guess someone at Nintendo really likes this title. Maybe it's the same person who keeps bringing back Urban Champion. You like strategy games? Then you'll love the Nintendo Wars series. Most people watching this are familiar with Advance Wars on the Game Boy Advance, or maybe Battalion Wars on the GameCube, but the series actually started in Japan on the Famicom as, you guessed it, Famicom Wars. There was also Game Boy Wars, Super Famicom Wars, and almost a 64 Wars before that got canned, because the 64 is a graveyard of dead games. The last games in the Wars franchise were Days of Ruin on the DS, and Battalion Wars 2 on the Wii, both released in 2008. I can't find an exact reason why the Wars series has died out. Maybe it isn't as marketable as other titles, or maybe no one knows how to follow up Days of Ruin, or maybe Intelligent Systems wants to focus on Fire Emblem, now that that's their main cash cow. I don't know. If there's any War fans watching this, let me know in the comments what you think. I do know that Wargroove on the Switch is touted as an Advance Wars spiritual successor, so check that out if you want. I'm going to bundle these two franchises together, 1080 Snowboarding and Wave Race, two of the best 64 games in my opinion. Not many people realize that Wave Race actually started as a Game Boy game back in 1992. But both series were really popular on the N64, it seems like the polarizing reception to their GameCube outings seemed to kill both franchises. A new Wave Race was proposed for the Wii, but it never got the green light. Tokyo Mirage Sessions was awesome, and you weeaboos should be ashamed for not buying it the first time around. Or the second. Astral Chain, in my opinion, is one of the best Switch games. Yes, the camera and lock-on systems suck. Yes, the plot is a cliche mess. Yes, the game runs at 30 frames per second. But none of that matters, as the combat is tight and varied enough, and it keeps throwing new stuff at the player at any given opportunity. The art style is superb, and it's definitely cut from the same cloth as Ghost in the Shell or Appleseed, and I'm about it. And the music is top-notch. While Platinum developed it, Nintendo published it and it sold really well, selling over 1 million units, which is really impressive for a Platinum title. Nintendo must have been impressed since they bought the IP from Platinum, so it's not a question of if we'll get a sequel, but when. Another Platinum game, The Wonderful 101, released on the Wii U, but sold like dog shit between crap marketing and the Wii U, well, selling like crap. Thankfully, The Wonderful 101 had enough of a fanbase that Platinum was able to fund a Kickstarter for Switch and PlayStation 4 ports. So why the Kickstarter? From what I understand, Nintendo owns the IP, but Platinum wanted to port the game to PS4 as well as Switch. While Nintendo was okay with that, they told Platinum that they had to foot the bill for porting and publishing themselves. Since Nintendo owns the IP, if we get a sequel, it will surely be a Switch exclusive. Rhythm Heaven is one of those wacky Nintendo IPs that only Nintendo could have made. It's Elite Beat Agent meets WarioWare, and I totally stole that from the TV Tropes article. Fun, micro, rhythm-based games. There's actually quite a few games in the series, but it's been quiet since Rhythm Heaven Plus in 2015. I don't know why the series has been quiet, but hopefully something comes out in the future. Americans hate Tingle because he is a creepy man in a leotard who charges way too much for your maps. In Japan, people love the bastard, and Tingle got 2 games starring the fuck. Given that Americans really hate the guy, it's no wonder Nintendo hasn't done much with Tingle as a franchise. You would have a very large market that would actively hate the title. The hate is so bad for the guy is that Sakurai even said that Tingle would never be playable in Smash because he is so hated in America. As a result, Nintendo doesn't do much with Tingle these days, outside of jabs here and there. When you combine SD Gundam, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Together, you get Custom Robo. That is a terrible description of this game. Custom Robo is fun robot battle games with a lot of customization. The GameCube title is one of my favorite games on the GameCube. However, the poor sales of Arena on the DS seem to kill the franchise. I rented Chibi Robo back in the day. I like being a tiny robot in a big world. There are some emotional moments here, and the GC title is very unique for that. With that said, no one knew how to follow up the GameCube title, as the handheld games were alienated fans with each new release, and sold poorly as a result. Now Chibi Robo only exists as an immortal meme from Nintendo, and being thrown in the toilet by Scott the Woz. Visual novels are a genre that is popular in Japan, but not so much in the States. It's no wonder that the Detective Club titles missed the States the first time around. In fact, the character Ayumi Tachibana almost made it in Melee but was passed over due to her obscurity. Thankfully, the Famicom Detective Club games are getting a remake on the Switch, so now more people can join the club. I love mechs, so I was very hyped for Daemon X Machina. Nintendo published it on the Switch and it just kind of appeared and faded away. It's a shame as this game is really good. If you like custom mechs and explosions, Daemon X Machina is worth a checkout. It's also available on the PC. Black Box games. There is something about the Black Box NES games that I love. They are very simple, both in graphics and in gameplay, but they just resonate with me. Many kids had these sports titles early on in the system's life, as these games were some of the only sports titles on the NES. Some of these titles like pro wrestling and ice hockey are really good. Others like baseball and tennis are just kind of there. Some of these are available on the Switch NES library and are worth checking out. I actually have Mach Rider back home in New Mexico, and it's a fun little game, except that it is really easy to die. Sakurai almost picked Mach Rider to be a fighter in Smash, but hey, that didn't happen. At the time of making this video, it is not available on the Switch NES library. And here's an interesting bit of trivia. Prior to Mach Rider's NES game, Mach Rider was a toy set in Japan. One of those Nintendo games that got no promotion, hardly anyone bought, but the people who did, love it. Sushi Striker is a puzzle game where you match sushi. I never played it, but it looks fine. However, the game sold like poo-poo. I think going for a full retail release for a game like this was a step too far for most people. An attempt from Nintendo to make a Western-inspired game, Geist was a first-person shooter where you play as a ghost. Well, not exactly a shooter only, as it had elements of platforming and puzzle elements in it. While it didn't set the world on fire, Geist is a cult classic and still has a small fandom. When you combine turn-based strategy, American comics, and classic literature together, you get Codename Steam, and based off that description, it's no wonder this game flops. If you had certain amiibo, you could use Fire Emblem characters as guest characters in your party. Sakurai Samurai, a fairly ambitious 3DS title where you go around, beat up people, and save the princess as the unnamed samurai. It got great reviews, and it got a spirit in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Gotta Roll Fast and Dylan Rolling Western on the 3DS. Nintendo made a lot of these weird 3DS one-offs that everyone just seemed to forget. It looked fine, but this was a last-minute edit in, so I felt too lazy to find footage for this video. Sorry to all the 3 Dylan fans out there. Double sorry for the 2 Steel Diver fans. And the 1 Denpa Man fan. I think being marketed as a girl game made people realize that Style Savvy is a Nintendo franchise, and a high-selling one at that. And yes, that one random J-pop song from Ultimate, Ring-a-Ding, comes from this franchise. I love the Oendan series. They're so quirky and insane that you can't help but love them. The localized game, Elite Beat Agents, is also equally weird and charming, to the point that it can make Cher songs tolerable. You dance with manly men or sexy women to pop rock tunes and help people out with things like, say, making a movie, fighting golems with baseball moves, or helping a salaryman slam a strong zero, then fight Kaiju Cat before blowing his voice off at a soapland. Yeah, this series was weird. If you're curious, Did You Know Gaming did a full in-depth history about this series, and I'll link you that in the description. I think between the licensed music and just how weird and esoteric these titles were, that meant that they were never going to be that high of sellers. Still, people do love these games, and it did inspire the online game OS. Nintendo Versus was a line of arcade games from Nintendo. Basically, they took their NES games and put them on arcades. Not one-to-one, mind you. Each game has differences between the home port and the Versus ports. They were nice for operators for their ease of use, but criticized for being graphically inferior to other arcade games at the time. Plus, why spend tokens on a game you could own at home for essentially the same experience? There's a list on Wiki that I'll throw up now. Quite a few games got cancelled for the Versus line. Thankfully, Hamster has ported many of the Versus titles to the Switch via their Arcade Archives line if you're curious. One of the best DS games in my opinion. Line up 3 matching colors horizontally or vertically and make it rain on your opponents. Meteos was an amazing game with amazing music and presentation. Tetsuya Mizuguchi of Rez and Sega Rally fame produced Meteos, and a guy known as Masahiro Sakurai designed the title. You might know Sakurai from little games like Kirby or Super Smash Bros. Meteos had a Disney spin-off that no one talks about and a 360 port. However, the rights to Meteos as well as Lumines were bought out from Q by Japanese smartphone game maker Mobcast. While Lumines has a console port, due to Meteos using the stylus and touchscreen on the DS really effectively, I can't see Meteos getting a home port anytime soon. Nintendo's first free-to-play game was a baseball minigame collection for the 3DS in Rusty's Real Deal Baseball. It's notable for the ability to haggle and reduce the price of the microtransactions. It's one of those really weird Nintendo ideas that only Nintendo could have done. Pull Blocks is a game in the Small Pushmo series, which is a series of downloadable puzzle games for the 3DS and Wii U. They are small but charming puzzle games that have simple but addicting gameplay. There was going to be another game planned for the Wii U called Pushmo World, but Intelligent Systems Switch projects needed all hands on deck, so the final Pushmo game fell to the wayside, and I really hope they bring back that final game to the Nintendo Switch. Clu Clu Land is another early NES game where you gotta uncover the pattern. I like these games, but they're kind of weird to control. It takes a bit of practice, but you do get used to it. It's a fun little game if you give it the chance, and it is worthy of being in your NES collection. Hollow Knight got a hollow dick. We are harmonizing tonight with Harmonite. It's a little auto side-scrolling rhythm game where you go around and hit the buttons to the beat, then beat your meat to defeat the evil. Again, as a digital 3DS game, it didn't make waves, but critics seem to like it well enough. I remember there was a bit of hype for Electroplankton back in the day. Not so much a game, as so much it is a music-making toy with really cool art. If you can play it, I recommend giving it a shot. It's probably known these days for being a level in Smash Bros. Starfy is that one assist trophy from Brawl. It was a series of platformers on the Game Boy Advance in Japan, but eventually got a localized game for the DS. The people who tried it loved it, but again, it sold like poo-poo. Hey, look at this, another obscure puzzle game from Nintendo, this time made by Shigeru Miyamoto himself. In Mole Mania, you move a ball to the end of the level, and you use your mole powers like digging to help out. It looks cute, and has seen a re-release on the 3DS. I think Mole Mania should return. I can totally see this being a $10 digital game that Nintendo inflates to a full retail release that bombs. Sin and Punishment is Nintendo's bullet hell from Blood Knight's Treasure. These games have plots that make absolutely no sense, but the action more than makes up for it. The N64 game was supposed to get a domestic release during the N64's life, but it came out too late in the system's lifespan. Though it did release on the Wii Virtual Console, and it sold well enough to inspire a sequel on the Wii. Since Treasure is kind of dead these days, we'll probably never get a third game. I did review both games back in 2018, so you can go check out that video after this one is done. Licensed games tend to be not good, but not too many licensed games have Shigeru Miyamoto working on them. Popeye was a decently popular arcade game and got an NES port, but hasn't seen any modern release due to the license holders being really stingy with the Popeye property. Happy Happy Joy Joy is Joy Mech Fight, a Famicom fighter that has limbless robots yonks before Rayman. As a 1993 Famicom release, it shows how powerful the system can be, but that's also probably the reason why this title stayed in Japan. By 1993, the Super Nintendo was out, and Nintendo didn't feel like wasting resources localizing a fighter that wasn't going to sell well and seemed dated in a post-Street Fighter II world. Do you want to know where Nintendo C-listers go? They go to Captain Rainbow, where the titular hero helps them get them out of their slump, like helping Lip with her flower allergies or helping Little Mac lose weight. Who'd win in a fight? Big Mac, Fat Yoshi, Fat Mario, Big Chungus, Fat Chocobo, or Thick Sonic? Place your bets. I remember a lot of people back in the day were hyped for Captain Rainbow, but it stayed in Japan on the Wii. It was supposedly due to risque content or the concept not being viable in Western markets. Whatever the case is, the game bombed in Japan and only exists as Spirits in Smash Ultimate. There is a fan translation available if you're curious. Someone should do a sequel to Captain Rainbow, but instead of helping out Nintendo C-list characters, you're helping out washed out Super Smash Bros. Or Nintendo speedrunners like, it's okay, you suck at Smash now, but you always sucked at Smash. It's okay, don't worry, it'll be alright. Devil's World was an early Famicom game where you survive heck from a Speedo-wearing devil as you eat eggs. Yeah, this was a weird one, and due to its religious imagery, it never came out in the States. A first-person 3D game on the Game Boy? You better believe it. X is probably the most graphically intensive game on the platform. It went under the radar, as it never left Japan, and had a very mixed reception there. It doesn't help that the name is very generic. X is a collector's piece these days, and had a sequel called X-Scape on the DSi. Why yes, Doshin was that one trophy from Melee. Be a god and either help or torture your residents of your island. And hey, guess what? The two titles for the 64 and the GameCube neither left Japan. It was allegedly considered for a domestic release, but the sales in Japan were kind of not so good, so those plans were scrapped. Not to be confused with Disaster Report, Disaster Day of Crisis is where you play as this bender and save people from disasters. It's known for its camp story and varied gameplay. Reggie was very skeptical about its sales potential in the States, and based on how poorly Crisis sold in Europe, he was right. Wasn't this a Metallica song? Anyway, For the Frog the Bell Tolls is a weird little RPG for the Game Boy. It's a parody of the genre and is a light-hearted affair. And there's frogs. Like, a lot of frogs. Link's Awakening on the Game Boy uses the Frog engine, and the hero of the Frog games makes an appearance in that title. Most people know this game for the Prince of Sable's appearance in Super Smash Bros. As an assist trophy. So I guess the pitch for Tomato Adventure was someone playing Dragon Quest for hours on end but forgot to eat, so they made an RPG based on food. Yeah. Well, I gotta say, it's a charming little idea. It was developed by Alpha Dream, who made the Mario and Luigi games, but sadly they closed their doors in 2019. Kudu Kudu Kududin, what a title. Another puzzle game released both for the Game Boy Advance and GameCube. You fly the constantly rotating ship and don't hit the walls. And yeah, that ship was the assist trophy in Super Smash Bros. Brawl. These titles never left Japan, surprise surprise. I love Nintendo puzzle games. They are so charming, and it's a shame that this one never left Japan. I would have totally copped this back in the day. Thankfully, the Game Boy Advance game did get released virtually on the Virtual Console on the Wii U if you still have your Wii U. Did anyone buy Magical Star Sign on the DS? I didn't. And even more obscure than that is its predecessor, Magical Vacation, on the Japanese Game Boy Advance. It's an RPG, you use elements to fight and enjoy your vacation. Reading into this duology is kind of weird. Apparently it's really dark, and it's really saturating at the same time. And at one point there was an animated series proposed. There seems to be a small fandom for the Magical series, with the Game Boy Advance game getting a fan translation. The developers, Brownie Brown, changed their name to 1UP Studio and are still making games to this day. Ooh, Mark Jones! Star Tropics was a fun little duology on the NES. Cool games that have a lot of action and a really cool style that's like a mix of fantasy and, well, tropical fantasy. The sequel had elements of time travel too. I like the series, but it never went anywhere. So, why is that? Well, it never released in Japan or Europe. How's that feel, Japan? You drunken perverted bastards? You get denied an awesome game that Americans got. America, #1! Thankfully, Nintendo of America has been good about releasing the game on modern platforms, so it's easy to enjoy these days. White-haired anime babes were off to a good start. Another Code was an adventure game on the DS. Never played it, but I have definitely seen advertisements for it. It actually shares a universe with another Nintendo visual novel, Hotel Dusk. While the DS game was a critical and commercial success, the Wii sequel, I'm fucking not reading that name, wasn't so lucky and never released in America. Tragically, the developer Sing filed for bankruptcy in 2010, so another Code probably won't happen. Oh hey, look at this, more visual novels on the Famicom that never left Japan. Shin Onigashima is about saving your folks from Oni, and Yuyuki is based on Journey to the West. While Shin Onigashima was ported to the Super Famicom and Game Boy Advance in Japan, Yuyuki hasn't been so lucky and has been stuck on the Famicom. She's a super freak, she's super freaky forms, yeah. Create your own bastard creature and go on adventures in this awesome game on the 3DS. It seems like a really cool idea. If this was a toy released in like 2002 or so, I totally would have asked my parents for it, would have played with it for a little bit, then put it in the closet to never play it again until it goes to a Goodwill years later. I'm joking, but I like the idea. Looking at footage, the game looks fun and something that young kids would have liked, but the critical reception was pretty not so good, and I guess Nintendo decided to abandon the franchise, though it does have a song in Ultimate. This might be common knowledge for hardcore Nintendo fans, but just to recap, before getting into console game development, Nintendo was an arcade game developer, and one game that did not help Nintendo out in the arcade market was Radar Scope, a fixed shooter like Galaxian or Space Invaders. The game sold like crap and it didn't stand out, so Nintendo decided to make a little game named Donkey Kong, and it made Nintendo a lot of money. So Radar Scope is nothing more than a piece of trivia these days, and I have no idea how many machines are still in operation. If you're like me and you can't count to 10, what do? Play Make 10. It's a DS game in the Nintendo line of Touch generations. There's a few games in the series like Big Brain Academy, the Wii series, and Blue Ocean. Casual, educational games. Make 10 is where you explore and you make 10 of things, and I'm guessing this game was made for really young kids, as it didn't come out in America. Dig those graphics. The Xbox Series X has nothing on Monkey Magic, a 1979 arcade game from Nintendo. Judging from the gameplay, you play a Breakout-inspired game where you fuck up a monkey's face for God knows what reason. And that's probably why Monkey Magic was forgotten to time. If this game was made by NetherRealms today, that monkey would be nothing but a pile of flesh and blood by the time you're done with it. There's not much information about this title out there, and I have no idea how many machines are in operation still, but MAME is there if you're curious. Prior to the Famicom, Nintendo made some Pong consoles for Japan. There's a few out there with different games built in and different controllers. They are collector's pieces for sure these days, and are really cool as a novelty. Fluidity is a WiiWare game where you move the Wiimote to clean off a book. It's a Metroidvania type game that was published by Nintendo, but legally can't be obtained anymore thanks to the Wii Shop channel shutting down, but it did get a sequel on the 3DS eShop. It was never released in Japan. One of the few games worth checking out on the Virtual Boy. It's Punch-Out but with robots. It uses a cool first-person view, and it plays like a dream. Being stuck on the Virtual Boy means that it's doomed to time, but it is a spirit in Ultimate. Oh hey, guess what? Another puzzle game that never left Japan. This time on the Super Famicom. More specifically, the Satellaview. But don't worry, Sute Hakun did get a physical release. In 1999, why would you be buying Super Famicom games in 1999 when the Neo Geo Pocket Color was available? Anyway, this is a pretty cool looking game. You add colors to things and you make platforms. No enemies, just get to the end of the level. There is an English patch, and in the 2020 Nintendo leak, ROMs for the unreleased Game Boy and Game Boy Color games were found. I remember Drill Dozer being promoted a lot back in Nintendo Power in the day. It's an action game for the Game Boy Advance that had a force feedback game pack, which is really cool for a Game Boy Advance game. I remember passing it up because I hate how the main character looks. What's wrong with her hair? She looks like she's smuggling cinnamon buns in her hair and shaved off the rest. And shut it, I know my hair's gotten ridiculous too. But that out of the way, Drill Dozer is considered to be a fantastic GBA game, and the main character was an assist in Brawl. Game Freak likes to make these really weird one-offs from time to time. I guess they have to have breaks too in between Pokemon titles and huffing glue. We're up your alley with Unirally, also known as Uniracers. I've played this title before and it's a pretty fun game. You ride on as a living unicycle. No one ever talks about this title these days, but I think it's worth a look. A Wii game for the developers of WarioWare and Rhythm Heaven. Basically, Kiki Trick is the missing link between those two titles, and that's all I got to say about it, and it never left Japan. Cubivore. One of those games I saw back at Toys R Us back in around 2003 or so, looked at the cover, and didn't pick it up, and now I'm sad because it goes for a lot of money now. It's a life sim. Grow your animal and do shit. It looks cool, but it bombed in Japan, so Alice foot the bill for an American release, where it too bombed. Ugh. How many Japan-only music games is this? Well, one game did go to Europe. Jam with the Band is a small series of music games where you jam to licensed music, or you can make your own music in the game. Devil's Third is Devil's Turd. This game went through development hell, and by the time it actually came out, no one cared. Nintendo published it, no one bought it, the people who did buy it hated it, and no one cares about Devil's Third anymore, and let's move on. Kuriki Nano Island Story. Now, here's a weird one. It only released in Japan on the DS, and it's like a weird hybrid of Pokemon and Spore. You collect bacteria and duke it out. I can see why this game is so obscure. There is an idea here, but I think raising and battling bacteria isn't really what most RPG fans want, especially after, no. Tin Star is a rail shooter where you use the barely working Super Scope or the CHAD Super Nintendo mouse and shoot shit. The graphics are really good in this title. Critics seem to like it well enough, but I guess being tied to either peripheral meant that Tin Star was going to be Ben Star. Nintendo's take on The Sims. You play as Cupid and make sure the family you're watching over continues on. It's unique for the Game Boy Advance, as even when you turn the game off, events can happen while the game is off, and things can change next time you play the game. I will say Seinen Kazoku is really obscure, to the point where it doesn't even have a Wikipedia article. One of those love pillow suffocating ideas only Nintendo could have had. Odama is feudal Japanese war with pinball. You use the mic to give commands and get the bell to the exit. And that's why I love Nintendo. They throw weird shit at the wall to see what sticks. It was a fun idea, but I think having to use the GameCube microphone, as well as the normal GameCube controller, was a bit too much for such an esoteric title. I love the stuffed animals. There's something about the teddy bear that is so pleasant. I have one here, and his name is Tim. He protects my apartment and from people leaving mean comments on my YouTube videos. Teddy Together is a life simulator developed by Bandai Namco, but published by Nintendo in America for the 3DS. Just looking at footage fills my heart with cheer. Even the creepy voice isn't enough to keep me away. It's such a happy, feel-good time, and we need more of that in these godforsaken times we live in.
Let's play together again soon.
Sky Skipper walked so Sky Kid could fly. Well, Sky Skipper didn't so much as walk as so much it got kneecapped twice as it left the house. Sky Skipper was a planned arcade title that did poorly in location tests and didn't see a full release. The cabinets that didn't sell ended up being rebranded to Popeye machines. Thankfully, a few Sky Skipper machines survived time, and high-quality screens of the machine and controls are out there, as well as the ROM. I think that gorilla inspired a certain monkey. Even though Nintendo seems ashamed of Sky Skipper, I think it should get re-released by Hamster for the Switch. Hamster ports shit to the Switch all the time that no one cares about. At least give us one nearly lost game on the newest systems. I freaking love pinball. If I ever get a decent sized house and a ton of money, I will totally cop a pinball table, preferably the Simpsons Pinball Party. Nintendo made a few pinball games in their time, but none so obscure as Galactic Pinball on the Virtual Boy. What do you want? It's pinball on the Virtual Boy, there's not much to say here. I might as well add in another Virtual Boy title. Bound High was a cancelled title where you bounce and break stuff. Despite being cancelled, the ROM has been dumped and is in a nearly completed state. It might have been a killer app for the Virtual Boy, but imagine looking at this bouncing screen through the Virtual Boy and yeah, it doesn't seem like a fun time to me. Shigesato Itoi, the man who created the beloved and influential Earthbound series, is a man of many talents. In the 90s, he really got into bass fishing, and it made fishing games for the Super Famicom and 64. So, we could not get Mother on the 64, but in Japan we got fishing. Was it worth it? Yes! Do you want to look like an asshole and play games on your wrist in the 80s and 90s? Nelsonic has your back with the Game Watch line. Yep, you can cruise around town playing several official Game Watch titles such as Zelda or Star Fox on your wrist. These days you can play games in urinals. You don't need LCD wrist games anymore. Not to be confused with Super Donkey Kong, Super Donkey is an unreleased Super Nintendo game. It looks like a platformer of some kind with a kind of Rayman-like character, and an art style that reminds me of Yoshi's Island 2. It's a prototype, and I'm guessing this game didn't get ultra far in development. No, Crazy Kong is not a member of the Kong family that did a bunch of bath salts and ate glue in a Taco Bell toilet after publicly jerking it in the parking lot. Crazy Kong is an official version of Donkey Kong released by Falcon in Japan. So what do I mean by official unofficial? Nintendo told Falcon to make Crazy Kong in Japan to keep up with demand for Donkey Kong arcade machines. However, Falcon started distributing Crazy Kong outside of Japan, breaching contract. Nintendo wasn't happy about this and revoked the license from Falcon, but the damage was done and opened up the floodgate for really shitty Donkey Kong bootlegs. There isn't much difference between Donkey Kong and Crazy Kong besides some visual and branding changes. Wait, what? Harry Potter? Wait, this is a British series, so I should say this properly. Harry Potter, almost Nintendo! Yeah, to quickly recap, J.K. Rowling was interested in licensing out Harry Potter after it got really big, trying to get some of that sweet merch money. Several companies made offers to get the rights, including Nintendo. However, there were creative differences within Nintendo about directions for the games, which isn't a good look. Above all else, if Nintendo had the rights for Harry Potter games, that would mean that Harry Potter would have been stuck to Nintendo systems. Ultimately, EA got the rights to make games for Harry Potter. As a third-party publisher, they could port Harry Potter to any system they please. Still, just imagine what kind of drug-fueled experience a Nintendo Harry Potter would have been. There's an alternate universe out there where Smash Ultimate could have had Harry Potter, James Bond, Takamaru, and Ayumi Tachibana duking you out, and I'd still be mashing with Dark Pit. A friend of mine also got me this really cute Mimikyu plushie as well. Anyway, that is the Nintendo IP Iceberg Explained, and it was It was a lot. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned some new information here today. So let me some information down there in the comments. Have you played any of these games, or if you could revive any Nintendo IP, which would it be? Let me know down there in the comments. And while you're down there, it'd be really killer if you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell as well for notifications on future videos. And again, follow me on the social media, Twitter, Instagram @ZMings. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now. And yeah, see you in the next video. Later.